Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome on into Sports Talk with Broads. A little afternoon delight, if you will. The Sixers just completely annihilate the Hornets. And look, they played better. They absolutely crushed a squad. And it basically makes me laugh because after you saw them lose 3 straight games, the thought was they're a first-round exit squad. I'm not just making this up. This is what I was informed, and these were the characters that were tweeted out on the Twitter sphere when that all played out the way that it did. The Charlotte Hornets is the example of a team that does lose in the first round. That's your example, that 9th seed, 8th seed teams that will be playing in that extra week where they're looking to battle for a playoff berth in a real series. Those are the type of teams, the Charlotte Hornets, that's that. You see the difference when the Sixers come to play and they play a better pace, what goes down. I thought James Harden was magnificent in his role. Tobias Harris, 5 threes, took 9 total. So obviously his catch and shoot options and his ability to play with a ton of confidence is changing what this team could possibly be. And I just feel in previous games the ball was stagnant. The ball wasn't moving. There wasn't a ton of ball movement at all. Today the ball's flying all around to the point where Tobias Harris is looking for lobs to Danny Green, but then the ball still continues to move, and then it ends up being a shot later on throughout the possession after you're finding open teammates and swinging the rock the way that you need to. Just looked like a totally different team out there, one that was willing to compete, one that definitely executed at a higher clip. You saw a bunch of shots made. Now, to be fair, right, they're not going to make as many threes as they did today. When it's falling for Isaiah Joe and it's falling for Matisse Thybulle and it's falling for Danny Green and George Niang gets in the mix, when it's falling for literally everybody, then, you know, it's your night. But who's to say that you can't have your night? And I'm using air quotes here just to describe exactly what we saw today. If you have that once in a 7-game series, twice in a 7-game series, well, that's going to be insanely impactful to the outcome if you could have 2 of those nights. It won't be franchise tying 3 points made in a game type of outrageous effort, but still, I mean, just in a general sense of a night where everyone's in a rhythm and everyone's in a groove. They scored 45 points in the third quarter. They scored 41 points in the fourth quarter, and it wasn't even close. A great, solid team effort from everyone. Matisse Thybulle in that third frame was insane. Maxey had some electric shots, but it really starts with Toby too, because Toby early on somewhat set the tone, and it wasn't all beautiful. It wasn't all dandelions. That second half you went on that burst, but in the beginning stages there was back and forth Will Smith's occurring. And what I mean by that is normally I use haymakers as the reference. I tried to get cute. I tried to get fancy. I threw Will Smith in there for the smacks. But regardless, my point is it was you had some of their guys making some buckets, and then you countered, and now you lost the lead. You had the lead. You went up a little bit, and then it ended up being what, you know, basically the Sixers taking control and dominating the way that they needed to. You just look through the list. James Harden getting everybody involved. I thought the pace, though, for him was extremely important because in games past, dribble, 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 nobody else getting the ball, everyone kind of standing around, everybody watching, and then either driving or shooting the three, where today it was everyone else was getting theirs. Everyone else was getting involved. Now, you're going to have to find your balance because there's plenty of moments where I need him to be more aggressive. And I thought he even passed up looks today to get it to someone else. The difference in tonight, though, or this afternoon, I should say, is your other teammate was drilling them. What happens on a night where that's not necessarily the case and it's not their night? Now we're begging James Harden to be more downhill and to be more of a threat in the scoring department. 13 assists is amazing. 12 points, we anticipate more than that. I just wonder with where James Harden is at in his career, and I'm not downplaying those 13 assists, by the way. They were special, they were important, they were valuable, and he runs the floor really smoothly when he has this type of motor going and looking for Thybulle, looking for other players. It's crazy. These assists are not just nonchalant. These are filthy. It just looks somewhat easy, and it looks like he's not putting that much emphasis on on things, but he really is. He's just that much in a groove when he finds it. He needs to be a good balance, though, of the threat, which then organically opens up everybody else on the team as a whole because teams have to view you differently defensively. Now, we know the Charlotte Hornets might not be the best defensive unit in the world. I do believe that other teams make it more difficult on James Harden when it comes to the pick and roll. We saw the pick and roll work great. We saw the pace of the game change. I don't know if it'll look exactly the same against other teams. Granted, to defend my point of they're not a first-round exit squad, you see what a lethal talent can do, like you saw the Sixers do to a first-round type of team. That's a first-round type of team. The Charlotte Hornets, those are the type of teams that get the first-round exits. You see the disparity, but once you get to the second round, and if we're luckily enough to see a third round, you beg James Harden to beat you. You dare James Harden to beat you because, well, I know he's been working on catching and shooting, and he did show you that today. It was on display this afternoon. But knowing he's putting the ball on the floor more times than not, and knowing that he doesn't have a mid-range game, he tried it today, and it was nothing but an air ball. It went 5 feet over the rim, and it was extremely long. It just changes the game, though, when you are defensive, and you know that that's part of his repertoire that he does, and it could hurt the Sixers when that happens. I'm curious how it all plays out. It doesn't mean he won't do well enough. It doesn't mean he can't do well enough. I'm just pointing out that side of it as well because those details and that level to this team is still there. Other teams will make it more painful and make it more of a living hell to complete the same pick and roll sets. And to complete this style of pace, I don't know if you will be as effective against other opponents. But I like it, and I like the fact that they were able to do it today, and they have to build off of this. Tobias Harris being in a different form changes what you are capable of doing. This Tobias Harris is sensational. It really is. I mean, I looked at last year's numbers, and I told you it was about 22 points per game on about 38% from three. He might not put up the same amount of shots, but maybe he will. If it's catch and shoot style of Tobias Harris, he's going to get those opportunities. He's going to be available hanging out around the wing. So maybe he does 9 3-pointer. If that's where we're getting 9 3-point attempts by Tobias Harris, you get open looks. With the threat of Harden and Embiid, you're going to get the open looks. And speaking of Embiid, 29 points. This guy's all over the place. Sometimes he finishes at the basket and he's curling underneath the basket, kissing it off the back of the rim. I don't even understand how he's doing that. You mix in a step back three. I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense at all. But sign me up. And I love the fact that I heard Doc Rivers postgame talk about Joel Embiid, about the whole MVP thing, and Joel's like, I don't care. I want to win. I don't care. That's why it cracks me up with this whole narrative of the Jokic idiots, the Jokic morons, the Jokic dopes out there that nonstop just are in your comments every day, that are tweeting at you every day. I'm thinking about Alec Boehm. I'm thinking about the Philadelphia Phillies. Yet there's stupid people out there 24/7. Their only thing on their mind, the only thing that they care about is the Raptor of Jokic. But their point they always bring up is that Embiid only cares about his individual statistics. He doesn't care at all about team basketball. What the fuck are you saying? Like, you're just making shit up. You're just making anything up and just saying it out loud. It doesn't make it necessarily true. To say that Embiid doesn't care about winning, you don't follow Joel Embiid enough. And I love the fact that with Doc, he's like, I was kind of thinking like, yo, dude, go out and grab 50. Go out and do your thing. And Embiid's like, I just want to win. I just want to win. And that's true. See, I wouldn't run with that and care about it and point it out if I thought it was just coach speak, if I thought it was just player speak, if I thought it was just nonsense to make the fan base feel happy. But we get it because we've seen Joel Embiid grow up from basically the dude from Kansas. And by the way, shout out Villanova, who's about to beat Kansas, even with a Justin Moore out. That's how strongly I feel about Jay Wright and the program that he runs in the Philadelphia area. And that's right, I said in the Philadelphia area for all the people I can't believe somehow claim that that's not a Philadelphia school. Shame on you. We watched the guy grow up and blossom into a dude that cares, that wants to win, that wants to compete, and that's the number one thing on his mind. So it just is, it's crazy to me as a whole. We have $5 donations coming in from Nolan. Couldn't agree more, bro. It's great, solid team effort. Thank you. I appreciate that. Great minds think alike, Nolan, and that's basically where we're at with this performance. I think they just look through the list, and your guys play well. DeAndre Jordan even exploded. Had a couple plays defensively, had a couple alley-oops there and some big slams. It was just their night. I don't know how to pronounce this individual's first name, so I apologize. Thybulle? Just a regular season game. Don't taking too much out of it. Fine. That's fine. I say it all the time. When they lose, don't overreact. When they win, don't overreact. That's fair. But what I can't have happen is after you lose 3 straight and then fans cry that there's no way we'll ever even see one series win, and then they beat the Charlotte Hornets. You can't react to those 3 games and say, and put everything into it and say, this means we're going to fail. This means we are destined for losses early in the postseason. And then when they win, now all of a sudden, they can't beat the Pistons. They can't even beat the Pistons. They're never going to do anything. And then they beat the Charlotte Hornets. They go, I don't really care about this one. This is just one win that I don't care about because it's just a regular season. You can't have it both ways. I have not changed my posts, and I have not changed my stance on how I felt about this team for quite some time. They're going to have to work some things out, and it might have to be on the fly due to the fact that this team was put together and formed together at the trade deadline. We need to, I wish we had more time to get James Harden to establish himself the way that we're going to know to need him, but we don't know it right now. He needs to find that perfect balance, whatever that is, and the only way we'll gather that is by experience, but there's really not enough time for him to transform into fully 1,000% knowing his identity. He has a better understanding, which is it can't be too slowed down. It's got to have another gear involved, and it's more than just let me drive looking for fouls, dribble, step back 3. It's incorporating everyone else involved, but stay in your aggressive mode. So how is James Harden going to know that line and play it the right way? Because there's times where he takes everybody else out of it, and he's not even close to being the floor general that we need. And then at the same time, did you see some of these looks today? And sometimes it's a make-or-miss league. You could get these same looks drawn up and these same looks figured out, yet it's clank, 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 air ball. Leave it to Furkan Korkmaz at the end of the game, by the way, to be the reason why you didn't get that extra 3-pointer. And then look at that franchise record. Poor Furky. Can't do anything right. Hysterical. We're getting some trolls in the chat. LOL, Philly fans hyped after beating mediocre team. No, I just react to every game. That's what I do. So after every game, I discuss the game. In this specific outing, the Sixers won. I'm going to talk about this win, which was a great win. I'm going to talk about this team as if they are, when you look at the NBA standings, I will be discussing this team as if they are a 47-30 team after 77 games, which is good enough for 4th in the Eastern Conference, only 2 games back from the first overall seed in the Eastern Conference. That's why I'm hyped about this team when I talk about them positively, because over a 77-game sample size, they showed me that they're in the mix with the Celtics, who are a half game above them, the Bucks, who are 1 game above them, and the Heat, who are 2 games above them. That's why I am in the mode that I am in right now. It was nice to see them get off the schneid. It was nice for them to snap a 3-game losing skid. And Joel, 29-14, 12 of 16 from the field. There was a sequence without Joel and James Harden on the floor at the same time, and I was extremely bothered by it. And the response that I saw on Twitter was, well, they're just trying out new things so they know what they can and can't do in the playoffs. I'm sorry. There should never in a billion years ever be a situation where James and Joel are not on the floor at the same time. So what are you trying to figure out? What is the knowledge? I'll tell you the knowledge. I know the logic right now as we're sitting here. You're never going to need to run a unit without either of those two. I don't care how great Tobias has been. I don't care how good Tyrese Maxey was today. I never, in a 7-game series, want to see Harden or Embiid, both of them off the floor at the same time. There's nothing you need to learn. The only thing you need to learn, Doc, is to listen to the damn show so I can let you know and inform you. Don't do it. Don't do it. Let's go to the phones. Let's bring in Amadeo. What's up, Amadeo?
You know, the past week and a half, just like watching the Sixers team over and over, I'm seeing Tobias Harris, like, even though like over the past couple of losses they've been brutal, but I think Tobias is starting to get a little more confident. And I think this game today was probably one of his best that he's had this season, and it's very nice to see that.
For sure. Oh, he's definitely feeling his groove. And look, there's a lot of players in this league, and every player is different. They have a different sense of kind of adapting, a different style of learning. When James Harden came here, he seemed to struggle more than anyone else on finding his spots and finding his ability and learning that he needs to catch and shoot. Now that we witnessed a handful of games, more than a handful of games, a good amount, it seems that, okay, I think I got it. I think I know what I need to do now. Just because it didn't happen with the snap of a fingers, it didn't mean it was never going to happen. Sometimes it just takes time, and now we're kind of seeing it play out right in front of us.
And yes, especially with his backstretch toward the season, maybe he can build a little more confidence, and then going into the playoffs, maybe you get a little more confidence to Tobias Harris, especially with the way Joel Embiid plays. Hopefully Harden finds a way to pick it up, because if you have those two going off and then adding Tobias Harris and then maybe a Tyrese Maxey going off for a few games, that could be very beneficial, especially in 7-game series for this team.
Definitely. I mean, you can make the argument. Thanks, Amadeo. I appreciate it. Tobias Harris exploding. No, I don't know, 5 threes. Probably not. But if he's in that 3 threes type of range and he's catching and shooting and giving you that spacing so then Joel can now attack. Think about it. If Tobias is hot and he starts off knocking down 2 of 3 from 3, now teams have to look at the perimeter differently. Now teams have to analyze and realize, hey, keep your eye on him. Hey, he's hot. Hey, if he gets it, he's going to fire. Yo, they like to catch and shoot from this corner. So now your attention is somewhat drawn to him. Not that you're going to leave Joel Embiid, because if you're a betting man and you're the defense, you'll say, I'll live with Tobias over Joel. But at some point, if he's cashing in, he becomes a target. He becomes a focus. The spacing of the floor now even allows Embiid to go to work a little bit easier. And if Joel Embiid just has that much more space, just a hair more of space when he's thinking of operating in a half court, that makes the difference in the world for sure. So all around, Tobias Harris and Maxey, if both of them are flying around. Now, I don't anticipate both of them to be what they were tonight in every single game. It's just not going to be the case. But it's nice to know. See, there was an area in the season where if Maxey wasn't playing well, you couldn't rely on Tobias. Tobias kind of fell into that back corner. Tobias basically was Howie Roseman when Chip Kelly came to town, and he was thrown in the back of the closet and said, screw you, we don't need you, forget about him. But now, if Maxey is off to a slower start, if he is getting shelled defensively, if he is problematic and he's missing all of his shots, and oh, by the way, he is getting annihilated and toasted on the defensive side as well, now there actually is a path for Toby to give you 20 plus, to score 25, 26, 27 points. Where I don't know 3 weeks ago if I would have felt as confident saying that. And I'll look exactly at his game log as of late. He's been shooting well. He's been taking good shots. He's been smelling some confidence. He had 23. He had some nice assists today, too. And Embiid, too. I don't know if the stat lines fully tell the full-on story, even though the team total assists definitely do. But I feel some players might not have the sexiest assist total number, even though they probably maybe deserved more. The game felt like they had a bit more pop in that department out of them. Tobias Harris, 23 points, 8 of 13 from the field, 5 of 9 from 3. He had 14 points, 3 blocks, 6 against the Detroit Pistons, 22 points against the Milwaukee Bucks, took 8 threes in that game. Just looking at the volume against the Chargers, the Clippers, he had 5 3 attempts. Against the Lakers, he had 5 3 attempts. Against the Suns, he had 5 3 attempts. If we're living between that 5 and 9 area, obviously 9's on the more aggressive side, but if that's what we're seeing, that tells me a little bit about some of these offensive possessions and getting James Harden to maybe attract some defenders and having that be an open look in the corner. And what it really tells me is more about Tobias knowing his role here with this current setup. And that's massive. That's step 1. Now, step 2 is execution and making sure the ball goes through the hoop. But step 1 is recognizing and understanding what needed to change. And I think the sample size of what we've witnessed as of late tells you that he's kind of figured that out. Let's go back to the phones. Hello, good afternoon. You're on.
Hey, bros. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
I'm good. That was a fucking great win. Great win. First, I want to say, you said a couple weeks ago that obviously you got your 1A and your 1B.
Yes.
You got James and you got Joel. And then you said you can either have Toby, who has a night like this, and, Tyrese kind of has a slower night. And then it could go vice versa. Toby has a bad one and Tyrese has it. But if you get both of them 20 plus, we're going to be tough to beat. Tough to beat.
Exactly. No, I agree with that, though. Real quick on that point is you're absolutely right. I think today, not that, look, you can't bet on them to be this insane every single night, but it just shows 100%. You that if they are playing to their max capability, that they could literally blow out a bottom of an 8th seed, a 9th seed. But if you look at what that means, if you're that much separated from an 8th seed, doesn't that tell you that you're in the upper echelon of the Eastern Conference?
I don't know. It's tough.
You don't think so?
Like this, and I think 100%. If you blow out the Hornets by 30, I mean, they're not bad. I get it. They're not the Bucks or the Nets, but they're a pretty good team. LaMelo, Miles
yeah, that's
Bridges.
what I was saying. I'm thinking if you can show your worth today and you're that much better than the Hornets, who are around an 8th seed type of squad. I'm really referencing the people after 3 straight losses that now really ran off the ship and claim that they're not even going to be able to get out of the first round. It's like, calm your jets, see how much better you are than a first-round team. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, and Tobias has been playing really well as of late. And Tyrese, I love him. I mean, he is good. Just the burst. He just blow by anybody. And now him and James Harden's taught him that step back. He hit one today. Oh, my God.
We knew that was going to happen. I appreciate the call. We knew that he was going to incorporate some of his style to Maxey. Maxey's a sponge. That's how he's always been described. So he's hanging around all these dudes. He's hanging around Doc Rivers and Sam Cassell. He's in the weight room. He's in the film room. He's on the court. He's taking shots. It's 1,000%. This guy's always in the gym. Remember those pictures that he put up on social media earlier in that off season, and he was lacing up, he was in the gym. It might even been a little bit earlier in the regular season too. It just seems like that was forever ago, in October, in November. He's putting up all sorts of pictures of him hanging out at the practice facility. The kid just loves ball. You knew that he would incorporate that type of style to his game for sure. And it's not just him. It's Joel Embiid too, because Joel Embiid's now hitting deadly step backs, and it's an amazing watch as a whole. And yeah, I mean, you just see that this team, if everyone plays their capability of maximum potential, that it could be a scary sight. It's just everyone, every single night, all the time? No, that's not sustainable. Someone will probably have a tough time. Who will pick you up when that's the case? If Maxey does fall and have a hiccup along the way, is there enough in George Niang and Tobias Harris to pick up that slack? Does that mean James Harden now, instead of 12, has to go for 20 while still applying his 13 assists? So instead of 12 and 13, it's 20 and 13, and maybe Maxey doesn't deliver as many threes during that third quarter span, and it's somebody else? Is there another player that you can call on? I think from a one-player level, yeah, maybe. But if two guys have a slower night, no, your depth is not that much deeper. You know, you have a super thin bench. You don't have that many guys where, hey, we have the audacity to start super slow and three guys not having that. No, if three guys aren't having it that night, you're cooked. You're fried. Can you get away with one of them? Sure. You also won't be going as deep. You won't be going as deep. More starters, more minutes. 42 in that range. That's what I want to see out of our starters. I look back over at the chat, and literally the only thing that gets discussed every day is Jokic and Embiid in the chat. I feel like we're better than this, right? I mean, honestly, I feel like we're better than this. Charlotte beat the Nets, so they can't be that bad of a team, right? Well, that's why I say teams beat teams in the NBA regular season. It is what it is. That's how this league works. The Sixers lost to the Pistons, but they beat the Celtics and they beat Miami earlier in the year. And they had great wins against Chicago all season long, but they lose to teams that they shouldn't. And they lose like every single NBA team that's really good loses to a team. The Pistons stink, right? We all agree the Pistons absolutely stink. Let's look at their schedule, shall we? Let's go to the NBA. What do they have, 20-something wins? Like, they're awful. They still won 20-something times. They won 22 times. So looking at some of their wins, who do they end up beating? Well, there's not going to be many of them. But they will have... Oh, sorry. This is taking forever to load. They beat the Raptors on March 3rd, 108-106. They beat the Hornets, who the Sixers just beat in overtime, 126. They beat the Cavaliers, 106-103. They beat the Boston Celtics, 112-111. They did lose to the Grizzlies. They lost to the Timberwolves. They beat the Cavs again on January 30th. They only lost to the Nuggets by 5, and it was actually a scenario where it was a home and home. They lost to the Nuggets by 6 and then lost to the Nuggets by 5. As you can see, there are situations. The Pistons beat the Raptors again. The Pistons beat the Jazz. The Pistons beat the Bucks on January 3rd by 11 points. Who else did the Pistons beat? The Pistons beat the Heat 100-90. So that just puts it in perspective. When everyone complained, oh, it's only the Sixers. Oh, everyone. The Bucks, the Heat, the Celtics, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Raptors, and the 22 wins that the Pistons have, they beat top-tier opponents. Welcome to the NBA. You can't just react to one night, one random game, one stretch of 5 games, one stretch of 7 games, and then apply everything. I've seen 77 games to this point. Throughout 77, that's the collective grouping to assess, to make a certain statement on what you think the damage can do with this, what this team can do, and the damage that they can put on another opponent. With that said, though, you just see the difference. When this team comes ready to play, they annihilate another playoff team that's at the bottom of the barrel, right? That play-in type of seeding. I'm only referencing that because of the nonsense that I heard that they're not even a one-round winning type of team. And this is just one game, I get that. I'm referencing the full 77 to apply my logic to. With that, back to the phones. Hello, good afternoon. How are you?
Hello.
What's up?
How you doing?
I'm doing good, man.
Hey, I'm actually on the show. Well, I just wanted to get on here and say one quick thing, that we should kind of be scared of Harden, because Harden is kind of looking washed when it comes to getting buckets, but he can still get rebounds and assists. But when it comes to getting a basket, he's looking kind of washed.
I agree with you. I do think that he's not the same scorer. And now that we've seen him play under our microscope, which is different than watching from a distance, it's fair to say that he has lost a step. Now, has he lost a step fully because he's incapable? Has he lost a step maybe because the hamstring injury is a real injury that's making him suffer? But he still is very valuable to running an offense and playing a pick and roll game. And there's still a lot of elements to his game that will help this team push forward. But there's no denying that he's not that same 30 to 35 points per game. And, he's hitting whatever feels like 7 threes in a game, 6 3 step backs. He doesn't have that anymore, but that might not be exactly what we need. We could still maybe get it done.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I had another question for you. I wanted to know, do you think the Sixers should sign him to that max if he doesn't perform in the playoffs? Like, do you think we should sign him next year if he doesn't perform at all?
It honestly is a question, and I appreciate that. 2 very good points. Thank you so much. It's a question that I think needs some real dissecting, and my gut tells me yes. I understand the concern, and I'm willing to just breathe and think about it. That's all. I'm not saying I wouldn't do it. Having James Harden is better than not having James Harden. $40-something million, super money, big time for a guy who you can tell is definitely not at a 10 anymore. He's more about a 7.5. That's where I think he's at a 7.5. He's an 8. He used to be a 10. He's probably in that 7.5 range. You have to think about it. Now, with that said, if you acquire a Bradley Beal, if you move on from Tobias Harris, and let's say in a hypothetical world, Daryl Morey starts pushing some buttons, he gets creative, he gets cute and fancy, and now you have James Harden making a lot of money, but the role is different if you're playing with a Beal and you're playing with an Embiid and you're getting carried by, the way Embiid's more in his prime, the way Beal is in his prime, and then Harden gives you a 7.5 of what a 10 used to be for a sensational player. It's still a magnificent piece to the puzzle. You're applying a lot of money to his name, but his role is different, but still insanely important to the success. Is that something that I'm willing to attempt to swing with and, kind of live and die by that type of mentality? Yes. Yes, I am. But there is a lot to consider when you think about all that money tied to a dude. Is it a hammy? Is it just who he is? Is it a combination of both? I do not know that information, but bringing that up is fair. I think it is a logical conversation, but I feel deep down when you have someone like this, you don't let it slide. You don't let it slip. And I almost wonder, with how everything played out with the financial situation at the trade deadline, I feel there was a reason why it played out this way. Oh, they didn't get the signing and it didn't happen. Well, it didn't just happen because Daryl Morey's stupid. It didn't just not happen because James Harden's stupid. There was a methodical financial reason why it did not shape up the way with the extension at the deadline. And I'm fascinated to see maybe what Daryl Morey has cooking to see what has changed with this thought as a whole. Like I'm fascinated by Daryl Morey in the offseason, but that's just not a conversation for today. I'm fascinated with the facilitation, with the pick and roll, how much that opened up a lot of things. Joel Embiid was great. Joel Embiid was just awesome. He definitely had the moment where he was cringing, and I feel I reference some point of every game where one of the top 2 players end up having a grimace moment, having a frustrated moment, having a moment where they fall on one of their legs and they go down and then they kind of hold it for a little bit. That's just the nature of the beast and something we're always going to see. Joel still responded, though. What I'm not used to seeing is Miles Bridges giving my guy Tyrese Maxey a mean elbow to the back of the head. I mean, let's go. I know we all want to be Maxey. I know we want to have that speed. I know we want to all have that three-point ability. But hey, Miles Bridges, I hate to break it to you, not all of us can. Now, I did bet Sixers -6 today to get the victory, and that cashed out. I did lose, though, which I thought, it's funny, I felt better about my player prop than I did about the game bet. So I ended up betting Sixers -6 today. Got a nice how do you do it off of that. And it's funny. Broads, you're an idiot. They don't know how to close out. Broads, you're dumb. They're not a good basketball team. No. They weren't playing good basketball. It doesn't mean they're not a good basketball team. They're just going through a miserable time and some tough life. And to be fair, against the Bucks, against the Suns, they didn't play awful basketball. They closed out poorly, and they had some uncomfortable possessions, but they didn't play bad basketball. They played bad against the Pistons. They didn't play bad basketball, even though they lost in the game against Milwaukee and the game against Phoenix. with the over-under, though. The over-under for Lonzo Ball assist was at 6.5, and he ended up finishing with 5. He had double-digit assists in his previous 2 games, and he finished with 9 the game even before that. So I thought that was almost a no-brainer, and it seems like that was just not the case, and I got slapped in the face. But I ended up doing well with the Sixers -6, and you figured at some point they would shine. You figured at some point they'd snap out of their funk, and they did that today. Now, it's a second half of a back-to-back. Very weird environment for this weekend. An afternoon game at 12:30, which throws the body clock all out of whack, all out of sync when you're used to having your pregame shoot-around, maybe taking your nap, having your pregame meal, going to the arena afterwards. Now it's a quick, hey, here you go. Hey, let's have at it. Basically, what is accustomed to being a shoot-around style is more just about you're actually playing the basketball game. But that was stellar that they exploded the way that they did. Now you're going on a second half of a back-to-back against the Cavs. Let's see what the Cavs did. You're also on the road, too. So some travel. They're 4-6 in their last 10. They won their last game against the Knicks, which was today. Okay. So they had a back-to-back. What time was their game today? Did they play a noon game as well? Is that what happened? They played a game today, won 119-101. So they're on the second half of a back-to-back as well. They just don't have, it seems, the travel, of course. So let's go to Nolan in Hilltown, PA. What's up, Nolan?
What's up, bros? How's it going?
I'm having a good afternoon, man. How are you?
Same as well. Great win for the Sixers today. Definitely needed that win after that horrendous 3-game losing streak that they had. And a couple of points I want to make. First of all, with the Jokic and Embiid comments in the chat, those were all just trolls. They just have nothing better to do with their life. So, I mean, that's really all I have to say about that point. Another point, though, it was so great to see Tobias Harris making his strides, continuing to be as efficient as ever, and everybody contributing on offense, making threes rain at the center today. That was so great to see. And one more point I want to make is let's go Nova.
Absolutely. Let's go, Nova. I'm rooting for them heavy. Thanks so much for calling. And yes, Josh mentioned this in the chat real quickly. The Cavs do have to travel because they played in New York, and now they're going to Cleveland. So they do have some sort of traveling in the mix as well. Nolan's right, though. Go Nova for sure. I do know that there's a lot of trolls in the chat at the same time. Yes, I definitely understand that part of it. Trust me, there's been a lot of trolls in my life that I had to deal with. And in terms of the Wells Fargo Center, just showing that energy, it just shows you that this team does have that extra layer to them. This team does have that extra level. Can you get this level out consistently enough in a 7-game series? And the answer to that question is in the air right now. We'll find out. We'll get that data. I can't really rely on Matisse Thybulle draining threes for you in the corner. Maybe there's something to him feeling some type of way. Maybe there's a different energy in his mind about maybe knocking some corner threes down. And I really hope so, because that could change the dynamic. Not that other teams wouldn't dare him, because every day of the week, no matter how many he hits in a row throughout this playoff run, he will be dared to shoot, and I would dare him every single time, even if he made 4 in a row, if he made 5 in a row, if he made 6 in a row. I'll take the bet and the percentages of what he has shown us to this point that it won't work. Keep going. Let's see. You beat us, Matisse, because if you beat us from 3, we'll go back to the drawing board after that. But there's no way in hell that that's going to happen. But there does seem to be some sort of better feel from him. We'll see. Does he keep growing, or is he what he is, and it just happened to be a night where everyone kind of made their shots and delivered? We'll find out. I do want to tell you about WinView. WinView is the nation's leading sports predictor, allowing you to compete in pregame or live contests against other people, not the house. You answer questions about each game before it begins, or you can play in quarter-long contests while watching the game to take your viewing experience to the next level. I'll give you an example as I open up my WinView app right now, and you can click the link in the description down below, winview.tv/Broad. Sign up utilizing that link. It will help me out tremendously. and it's so much fun. There's free games to play just to kind of get your feet wet in on the action so you can get what it's like. But it's 1 versus 1. So you both answer the same questions. If you do better than your opponent, then you take home the cash. All right, let's see. We have a Lakers versus Denver game. That's not open yet. Sorry. That is not open yet. Ooh, do we have Villanova? And we have Kansas. We have UNC. And we have Duke. That game is going to be bonkers. Literally insane. So the way that this works is, let's say, I'll use the Sixers game as an example. Will the Sixers beat the Hornets? Yes or no? Will LaMelo Ball record more assists than James Harden? Will Miles Bridges score more points than Tyrese Maxey? Will Joel Embiid record at least 30 points? These are the questions that are asked. Whoever answers more correctly ends up taking home the pot. WinView.tv/Broads. The link is down below in the description. It's a no-brainer. Check it out. You're going to have a blast. You're going to get addicted. All my buddies and I play nonstop. It's electric. With that, we'll go back to the phones. Good afternoon. You're on Broads Media.
Hey, am I on?
Yes, you're on. How are you?
Hey, Broads, how's it going? Listen, I'm calling from D.C. I'm actually a Raptors fan.
Okay.
Congrats on the win.
Thank you.
I'm wondering what you think about a possible Sixers-Raptors, matchup in the playoffs. I got to be honest. The way Harden's playing right now, I'm thinking that might be a favorable matchup for the Raptors. I don't know what you think.
I mean, I'm obviously going to lean in the other direction and say that I feel the Sixers. The only thing about the Raptors, and I'm not telling you they don't play a good team game, and I'm not telling you that they're not bought into Nick Nurse, and I think Nick Nurse will probably be better than Doc Rivers, but then it comes down to, in the NBA, superstar talent is more important than a head coach, and you might have the better head coach in a matchup, but if Joel Embiid plays and gives you 37 and 15, I just look at the Sixers roster and say, I like their talent more than I like the Raptors' talent. And in the NBA, talent wins more times than not. Now, that doesn't mean the Raptors don't have a shot at all in competition, because I do like their style, and I do think Nick Nurse knows how to push the right buttons. But I'll take my betting chances on more talent over less talent in the NBA any day of the week, whether that's the Sixers or any other team in a series. That's not just applied to my team. That's applied to any team in basketball.
Okay. Just curious. All right. Thanks, buddy. We'll see.
All right. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, if you're a Raptors fan, I would imagine you feel that the Raptors are going to do well in the series. I'm not saying it wouldn't be a fun series. Could it go 6 games? I don't think it's over in 4. I don't think it's over in 5. I think it could be a series that goes 6, 7, and it's going to be intense, and there'll be haymakers being thrown back and forth. But to say the way James Harden has been playing, he's had 2 really bad games, and then he's had in his last 5, he's had 2 bad ones and 3 good ones. That's why I think it's funny where the whole narrative is, he can't do this, he's never done this, this team always loses here. Well, we point out the negative ones, as we should, because it's unacceptable. And we can't keep that from happening. We can't have that happen. We have to change that. That can't keep happening. Something has to change. But over his last few games, too, there's been some electric scoring. There's been some dynamic scoring out of James Harden, too. It's not just been bad games only. And I'll even point that out. When they played the Bucks, he had 32 points on 17 shots, made 4 threes. He had 32 and 9 in 37 minutes. It's a damn good basketball game. He stunk against the Suns. Before that, against the Clippers, he had 29 points, he had 9 rebounds that game. No. Sorry, I'm getting all confused. Bucks, 37 minutes, 32 points, 9 assists. Clippers, 29 points, 4 threes, 15 rebounds, 7 assists. The Lakers, 24 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists. Today, only 12 points, but 13 assists, and clearly was a game changer and dictated the pace of play, which was the biggest highlight of everyone in the Sixers organization, which was, we loved their style. We loved their speed. We loved the way that we controlled the way that the game was playing out based off, we dictated it. And that's what was the biggest highlight from everyone. That was obviously a message and a tone that was delivered by Doc Rivers, and the team grabbed it and ran with it, and it applied it to the game for sure. So it's not like he's been playing awful forever. He played bad against the Suns. Everyone stunk against the Pistons except for Joel Embiid. You just see the difference. I always say it's a make or miss league. Today, they made all their shots. They win by 1 billion. Against the Pistons, other than Joel Embiid, they missed a lot of shots. They were awful. They were bad. They couldn't execute down the stretch. They executed fine to keep the game out of reach today. You make your shots, you miss your shots. You play at a good pace, you don't play at a good pace. I mean, that's just the difference here. But more times than not, they finish the job well. That's why they're 4th and not too far off from 1 in the Eastern Conference. We just remember and sulk in the negative more than we point out the positive. Not to say that you can't ever discuss deficiencies or discuss bad parts of your team or discuss the things that need to change or things that you need to tweak or pointing out what you feel can be the difference in winning or losing. Well, the defense is poor. That could be bad. The thin bench could be the reason in competing. You can't compete in a specific series because another team can go deeper, right? There's millions of things that you're going to point out on why you can lose a 7-game series. I'm not against that. But what I also feel is important whenever that is involved in discussion is point out the other side too. So X, Y, and Z is why the Sixers can lose the series. But A, B, and C is why they can win it. Why they can win it is never referenced as much as it should be. It's always, this is why we're going to lose it. And it's so hard to win that pointing out why you will lose, it's easier to sit by because the chances of losing is greater than the chances of winning. That's why even when you think of placing a bet on who's going to win the championship, it's all plus odds, plus this, plus that. Because when you talk about in the regular season and you're projecting, obviously, who's going to win, you have your seasons of the Golden State Warriors, who, by the way, when they went on that historic run, they didn't even finish the job by winning the championship that year. The reason I bring that up is you have an easier chance of being right when pointing out their flaws. And it's probably easier as human beings emotionally to tie yourself to something that has a greater percentage of happening because, well, I saw this coming. Oh, I don't want to get emotionally tied and then heartbroken. I don't want to feel so much pain. So you're just kind of naturally allowing yourself to pretty much convince yourself that it's going to go wrong so you don't get your hopes up and go crashing down. But I think that there's a happy medium here to do both. You can't go outrageous and say, oh, they're definitely 1,000% winning. Can they hang with other teams? Of course. Yes. And could their thin bench be the reason why they don't win? Absolutely. All of it is true. And it's fair to point out every single angle to that. But we don't get enough of the positive. We don't. Abs wants Dan Burke to be promoted as her head coach. I have no idea what direction they're going to go in with the head coach if things go sour, if things are a second round exit type of team. Ooh, what do they do? Now, Doc Rivers called out James Harden. He also said the bench wasn't bad the other night. Now, the bench was bad. Now, James Harden played a role in why a lot of the players stunk. Because when any point guard, and this isn't just to point fingers at James Harden, what you saw against the Pistons is an example of whenever a point guard plays that poorly, majority of the time everyone else is going to struggle and they will suffer with execution, getting up a lot of shots because the guy who runs everything is that disgustingly bad. So that's not a James Harden thing, that's in everything in sports situation, right? If one guy who is one of the most important players on a team is playing poorly, especially in basketball, when that guy has the ball in his hands all the time, it's like a defenseman in the NHL on the power play. If the guy who's running your power play at the top of the blue line can't handle the damn puck, the puck's bouncing over his stick, it's going back into the neutral zone, you can't set up. Who's going to have that much generated success on the power play? Nobody at all. So I don't understand I don't understand Doc Rivers while he wasn't wrong by pointing out James Harden was bad, to say that, well, our bench isn't a problem. No, the bench stinks too. The bench is bad, Doc. The bench isn't reliable. They might have moments, and we need them to have more moments than not. That's for damn sure. They may have moments, but to act as if they haven't been one of the most disappointing benches since the All-Star break, statistically, scoring-wise, it's right there in front of you. Where do the stars sit with Doc Rivers? Where there's smoke, there's fire. And there's already been reports referencing that maybe it's not as smooth as maybe we would like, which wouldn't surprise me. Because when you see guys snap like Doc Rivers, there's probably a reason why. It's bottled up emotion. My second Will Smith reference. When he walked up there and smacked the shit out of Chris Rock, that wasn't just one joke. After so many years, after so many different things play out, after so much involved with his wife and everything, at some point, you crack. When I hear Doc Rivers say certain things, and I hear him fire back at the media, and I hear him scream at certain media members and call out certain players in a certain demeanor, it's because he's snapping. That's what's going on. When he gets questioned, he backs down. Matisse, Mr. Bojangles, comments in and says, Matisse literally let threes fly today. Besides that, he either sets a screen or sits in the dunker spot. What are you talking about, scared? This is in reference to Abs earlier, who said Matisse looks scared. Today, he didn't look scared. Majority of the time, he looks scared, though. There is a connection between Matisse Thybulle and James Harden. They have to connect. They do. All I ask for Adam Matisse in a half-court set in a playoff series, can he get 6 points? Which is sad. Sad, sad, sad. But if he can get you 6 points, I think that that's a fair expectation to ask. In general, I need double digits. In general, I need 12. I need 10. I need 13. That's preferred. Knowing who he is and then putting a fair expectation on. If he can get me 3 cuts off ball baseline in 38 minutes of play, is that enough? Mixed in with defense this lethal. See, he can't keep guys in front of him. And then he always ends up going from behind, poking it, or trying to swat from behind. And that was one of my biggest concerns with him, even when he first got here. I kept realizing this dude just allows himself to get beat and then makes up for it after. And that's great in theory until you end up logging in 3 personal fouls in the second quarter, where you end up putting yourself in a miserable spot. And now you got to play more Danny Green, or you got to play more Shake Milton, or you got to play more George Niang, which who knows? Maybe in that game and that effort, it ends up being a blessing in disguise because Niang cashes in 4 threes, or he gives you 5 of 7, and the Wells Fargo Center erupts with all this sort of pop and passion in them, and it ends up being such a spark plug that it changes the trajectory of the game. I'm not ruling that out by any means. But Matisse Thybulle, there's so many times where he's useless, and there's so many times where this team still gets carved up, and he gets annihilated, and then he's also giving you nothing on offense. That's majority of the time, more than it is, this crazy game of 3-pointers cashing in. It's more the team's still getting shelled. This team allowed, 37 points in the quarter? They allowed 40 points in a quarter? Well, if he's giving you nothing on offense during that stretch, and your team's still allowing 40-plus with him out there on the court, what are we doing here? Ab says, even though our bench is reliable, Doc still needs to give Paul Reed. Our bench isn't reliable. He still needs to give Paul Reed, Isaiah Joe, and Bassey minutes. Look, you start screaming about Isaiah Joe, this and that. DeAndre Jordan stinks. Stinks. Charles Bassey or Paul Reed is not the difference in the Sixers going to the NBA Finals or losing in the Eastern Conference. It's not the difference. It's not the difference. Isaiah Joe is not the difference in this team getting to the Eastern Conference Finals. I just don't see it. I don't see it at all. But with that being said, we're going to shut things down here. I greatly appreciate all you guys hanging out with me. Okay, Abs reiterates himself here and says, my bad, I meant unreliable. Yes, they are unreliable, but I also feel we'll be saying the same thing about Isaiah Joe, who had plenty of opportunities to make a name for himself earlier in the season, and he did not do that. People forget, he had a lot of playing time, and Furkan Korkmaz was bad, and guys were missing time, and COVID. Isaiah Joe did have some playing time this year, and he did not look good during that time. He had those moments to try and snag that chance, and it just slipped completely from his fingertips. That doesn't mean he sucks. It doesn't mean he's awful, but I'm not going to tell you the difference in this team being successful or not is Bassey or it's Isaiah Joe, because you're talking about 4 minutes. And that doesn't mean 4 minutes isn't important. 4 minutes without Joel Embiid is very important. It is. It's extremely important. But I don't think that Bassey or Isaiah Joe is what's going to hold this team back from going to the Eastern Conference Finals. Isaiah Joe, the difference in this team going to the Eastern Conference Finals, I just don't see that. With that, thank you guys all so much for hanging out with me today during this late afternoon. We got the Final Four coming up. Weird start time for the Sixers. Weird show time, obviously, live here on Broads Media. But I had a lot of fun kicking it this afternoon. Nice weather outside, hanging out with the puppies, getting some stuff done around the house. It's a great, nice Saturday afternoon. Thank you guys so much. I'll shut up now, and I will see you next time.